The vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly before Marine James Walker as he guided his patrol ship through the outer colonies. Stars twinkled in the distance like scattered diamonds on black velvet, but Walker wasn't admiring the view. His eyes were fixed on the sensor readings that danced across his screen. "That's odd," he muttered, adjusting the sensitivity of his scanners. A faint signal pulsed at the edge of his detection range, barely visible against the background radiation of space. At first, he thought it might be a glitch in the system, but something about its regular pattern caught his attention. Walker tapped his communication panel. "Command base, this is Patrol Ship Delta 7. I'm picking up an unusual signal in Sector 47. Requesting permission to investigate." The response came quickly, crackling through his speakers. "Patrol Ship Delta 7, be advised. That sector has seen increased pirate activity. This could be a trap. Recommend you maintain your patrol route." Walker frowned, his fingers drumming against the ship's controls. In his 5 years of patrolling the outer colonies, he'd learned to trust his instincts. Something about this signal felt different from the usual pirate lures. "Command, I understand the risks, but these readings, they're not matching any known pirate signatures. And if someone's really in trouble out there..." There was a long pause before Command responded. "Proceed with extreme caution, Delta 7. Backup is 2 hours away at best speed." "Acknowledged, Command. Delta 7 out." Walker adjusted his course, following the mysterious signal. As he drew closer, his ship's more sensitive instruments began picking up additional details. The source was a vessel, but unlike any he'd seen before. Its design was sleek and organic, almost like a living creature frozen in space. But something was wrong. The ship was listing to one side, and there were clear signs of damage along its hull. "Computer, analyze vessel configuration," Walker ordered, maintaining a safe distance. Unable to match configuration with known ship designs, the computer responded. "Hull composition contains unknown alloys. Detecting minimal power signatures and extremely weak life support systems." Walker's heart began to beat faster. This was definitely not a pirate trap. This was something entirely new. He guided his ship closer, using his external lights to illuminate the damaged vessel. What he saw made him catch his breath. The ship's hull was covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shimmer even in the harsh artificial light. But these beautiful designs were marred by what looked like weapons fire. Several sections were badly damaged, with debris floating nearby in the zero gravity of space. "Computer, scan for life signs." One life sign detected, extremely weak, located in what appears to be the central chamber of the vessel. Walker made his decision. He'd sworn an oath to protect and serve, and that didn't just apply to human lives. He began the docking procedures, matching his ship's rotation with the damaged vessel. "Command, I'm detecting the single life sign aboard. They're critical. I'm initiating emergency boarding procedures." "Delta 7, this is extremely risky. We advise." "Someone's dying in there." Walker cut in, already securing his combat suit. "I'm going in. If I don't report back in 30 minutes, send that back up to my last known coordinates." He checked his weapon, oxygen levels, and emergency medical kit. The combat suit's enhanced strength would help if he needed to move debris or carry someone out. As he approached the airlock, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to step into something much bigger than a simple rescue mission. The docking tunnel extended from his ship, making contact with the alien vessel's hull. Walker took a deep breath, his hand resting on his weapon. "Computer, begin emergency override of external airlock." As the alien ship's airlock slowly cycled open, Walker squared his shoulders. Whatever he found on the other side would change everything. He could feel it in his bones. With one final equipment check, he stepped forward into the unknown. The moment Walker stepped into the alien ship, his suit's lights cut through the darkness, revealing corridors that seemed to be made of flowing metal. The air was thin and cold. The life support systems were clearly failing. His boots made soft clicking sounds against the floor as he moved forward, weapon ready. "This is Marine James Walker of the Earth Colonial Forces," he announced, though he doubted anyone could hear him. His words echoed through the empty halls, disappearing into the shadows. The ship's interior temperature was dropping rapidly, his suit's sensors showing it was well below freezing. As he moved deeper into the vessel, Walker noticed signs of violence everywhere. Scorch marks from energy weapons scared the walls, and what looked like control panels lay shattered on the floor. Something terrible had happened here. "Computer, direct me to the life sign," he commanded through his suit's communication system. Life sign detected 20 meters ahead. Warning. Signal growing weaker. Walker picked up his pace, keeping his guard up as he navigated through the ship's winding passages. The design was unlike anything he'd seen in his years of service. The corridors seemed to flow into each other naturally, as if the ship had been grown rather than built. He passed what appeared to be living quarters, glimpsing strange furniture and holographic displays that flickered weakly. Personal belongings were scattered everywhere, signs of a hasty evacuation, or worse, a fight for survival. 10 meters to life sign, his computer announced. The passage opened into a large circular chamber. Walker's breath caught in his throat at the sight before him. In the center of the room stood a massive crystalline structure, pulsing with a faint blue light. Within it, barely visible through the frosted surface, was a humanoid figure. "Computer, analyze the structure. Analysis indicates advanced stasis technology. Warning, power levels critical. Stasis field failing." Walker approached carefully, wiping frost from the crystal surface with his gloved hand. Through the clearing, he saw her, an alien, but surprisingly human-like in appearance. Her skin had a subtle iridescent quality, with delicate patterns that seemed to glow faintly. She wore what looked like ceremonial armor, now damaged and stained with something that might have been blood. "Life signs dropping," the computer warned. "Stasis field will fail in approximately 3 minutes. Walker examined the control panel next to the stasis pod. The symbols were alien, but he could tell from the flashing red indicators that something was terribly wrong. The pod was keeping her alive, but barely. "Computer, scan for injuries. Subject has sustained multiple trauma injuries. Internal bleeding detected. Body temperature dropping. Immediate medical attention required." Walker made his decision. "Begin emergency medical protocols. I'm bringing her back to our ship." He reached for the emergency release controls, but hesitated. In all his training, there had never been a section on rescuing alien princesses from dying ships. One wrong move could kill her, if the cold didn't do it first. The stasis pod made his decision for him. With a sharp crack, the crystal surface began to splinter. The blue light flickered and died. "Stasis field critical failure imminent," his computer announced unnecessarily. Walker acted on instinct. He slammed his armored fist against what he hoped was the emergency release. The crystal structure split open with a hiss of escaping gas, and the alien woman fell forward. He caught her before she could hit the ground, surprised by how light she felt in his enhanced suit. The moment he touched her, her patterns flared briefly with light, then dimmed again. She was ice-cold to the touch, even through his suit's sensors. "Multiple system failures detected throughout the ship," his computer warned. "Recommend immediate evacuation." Walker lifted the unconscious alien carefully, cradling her against his chest. That's when he noticed the small device clutched in her hand, some sort of data crystal, glowing with the same subtle light as her skin patterns. The ship groaned around them, metal stressed by the failing environmental systems. Walker turned and ran, retracing his steps through the corridors. Behind him, lights began to die one by one, darkness chasing them back toward his ship. He had no idea who she was or what had happened here. But right now, none of that mattered. All that mattered was getting her to safety before this beautiful, mysterious ship became their tomb. Walker's boots pounded against the metal floor as he ran through the dying ship, holding the unconscious alien close to his chest. The temperature was dropping faster now, ice crystals forming on the walls around them. His suit's enhanced strength made carrying her easier, but time was running out. "Computer, Status of her vital signs, he asked, breathing heavily as he rounded another corner. Critical but stable. Body temperature dangerously low. Medical attention required within next 10 minutes. Suddenly, the corridor ahead lit up with a red glow. Warning symbols appeared on the walls, pulsing with an angry light. A mechanical voice echoed through the ship, speaking in an unknown language. "Computer, translate," Walker ordered, slowing his pace. Rough translation. "Security protocols activated. Intruder alert. Defense systems engaging." The floor beneath him shuddered. From the walls, panels slid open, revealing what could only be weapon turrets. Walker didn't wait to see what they would do. He dove behind a support beam just as energy bolts streaked through the space where he'd been standing. "Command, this is Walker. The ship's defense systems are active. I have a critical survivor and need immediate extraction." Static was his only answer. The ship's hull was probably blocking his communications. The alien woman stirred slightly in his arms, her patterns flickering weakly. Her eyes remained closed, but her hand tightened around the data crystal she held. Whatever that crystal contained, it must be important. More defense turrets emerged from the ceiling. Walker looked around frantically, spotting a maintenance panel in the floor. With one arm still holding the princess, he fired his weapon at the panel, blasting it open. "Sorry about the property damage," he muttered to his unconscious charge, then jumped down into the maintenance tunnel below. The tunnel was narrow, barely wide enough for him to crawl through with his passenger. But at least there were no defense turrets here. Above, he could hear the weapon systems searching for them. "Computer, alternate route to our ship." A map appeared in his helmet display, showing a path through the maintenance system. It would take longer, but it beat getting shot. Walker began moving as fast as he could through the cramped space. Every few seconds, he checked the alien woman's vital signs on his suit's display. Her life signs were growing weaker, but she was fighting. "Hold on," he whispered. "Just a little longer." After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, they reached another access panel. Walker's display showed their ship was just on the other side. He pressed his ear against the panel, listening for defense systems. Nothing. Taking a deep breath, he kicked the panel open and pulled himself and the princess up into the corridor. Their ship's docking tube was just ahead, a welcome sight in the darkness. That's when everything went wrong. The alien ship's artificial gravity suddenly failed. Walker and the princess began floating, along with debris and pieces of the ship's interior. Worse, he could hear the hull creaking. The ship was beginning to break apart. "Not good," Walker muttered. He fired his suit's maneuvering thrusters, pushing them toward the docking tube. Behind them, chunks of the ship's interior were being sucked into space through growing cracks in the hull. They were almost at the airlock when a piece of floating debris slammed into them. Walker spun, losing his grip on the princess. She drifted away from him, still unconscious, moving toward an opening crack in the hull. Without thinking, Walker fired his thrusters at full power. He caught her arm just as the hull breach widened. The vacuum of space pulled at them both, trying to drag them out into the void. Using every bit of his suit's strength, Walker pulled them both into the docking tube. He slammed his hand on the emergency seal control, and the airlock slid shut behind them, just as the alien ship's hull finally gave way. They collapsed onto the floor of his ship's airlock as gravity returned. Walker quickly checked the princess's vital signs. Still alive, but barely. "Computer, prepare medical bay for emergency treatment. And get us out of here." As his ship disengaged from the dying vessel, Walker lifted the alien princess once more and rushed her toward the medical bay. He had gotten her out, but now came the hard part, keeping her alive. 3 hours had passed since the rescue. Walker sat beside the medical pod, watching the alien princess through its clear cover. The pod's soft blue glow reminded him of her stasis chamber, but this time the machinery was working properly, healing her injuries. His ship's computer had been working to understand her biology. Remarkably, despite her alien appearance, She was similar enough to humans that the medical pod could treat her. Her iridescent skin patterns had grown stronger, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. The data crystal she had been holding lay on a nearby table, still glowing faintly. Walker hadn't touched it since removing it from her grip. Some mysteries were better left until their owner could explain them. Vital signs stabilizing, the computer announced. Patient regaining consciousness. Walker leaned forward as her eyes began to flutter. They opened slowly, revealing irises that shifted color like oil on water. For a moment, she stared at the pod's cover, confusion clear on her face. Then her eyes found Walker, and she went completely still. The medical pod's translation system activated automatically. Walker heard his words being converted into musical tones as he spoke. "You're safe. You're on my ship. I found you in a damaged vessel." She watched him carefully, then spoke. Her voice was melodic, and the translator converted it to English. "You rescued me. Yes, your ship was breaking apart. I got you out just in time." The princess tried to sit up, but the pod kept her gently restrained. Her patterns flashed with what might have been frustration. "Please," Walker said, "you need to rest. You were badly injured." "The crystal," she said suddenly, her patterns pulsing with urgency. "Where is?" "It's right here," Walker assured her, pointing to the table. "I haven't touched it since bringing you aboard." She relaxed slightly, though her eyes remained fixed on the crystal. "Thank you. It contains important information about why they tried to kill me." "Who tried to kill you?" "My own guards. They were loyal to my cousin." Her patterns dimmed with sadness. "He wants my throne. The crystal proves his treachery." Walker nodded slowly. Politics, it seemed, were complicated no matter what species you were. "I'm James Walker," he said. "A Marine from Earth." "Earth." She repeated the word carefully. "We have heard of your people. Young, but brave." Her patterns shifted to a gentler pulse. "I am called Dawn Light of the Morning Stars, but you may call me Dawn. It seems I owe you my life, James Walker of Earth." "Just Walker is fine," he said, smiling. "And you don't owe me anything. Helping people is part of my job." Dawn looked at him curiously. "Your people are strange. On my world, such a debt would bind our families for generations." Before Walker could respond, the ship's alarm system activated. Unknown vessels detected entering sensor range. Match configuration of hostile ship from sector database. Dawn's patterns flashed with fear. "They'd found me. My cousin's assassins." Walker moved to the ship's control panel, checking the sensor readings. 3 ships, all larger than his patrol vessel, were approaching fast. "They will kill you too," Dawn said urgently. "You must surrender me to them. I cannot allow another death on my conscience." Walker looked at her, then at the approaching ships and smiled. "That's not how we do things where I'm from. Computer, unlock medical pod. Our guest needs to move to a safer location." "You would risk your life?" Dawn asked as the pod opened. "Why?" "Because it's right," Walker said simply, helping her sit up. "Besides, I didn't go through all the trouble of rescuing you just to give up now. Can you walk?" Dawn stood carefully, her legs unsteady. "Yes, I think so." "Good, because I have a plan, but I'll need your help. Those ships might be bigger than mine, but I'm betting they don't know these sectors like I do." Dawn's patterns brightened with what might have been hope. "Then we will fight together, James Walker of Earth." "Together," Walker agreed, as he prepared his ship for the battle ahead. The patrol ship shuddered as Walker pushed its engines to maximum speed. Behind them, the 3 larger vessels were closing in, their weapons already firing warning shots that lit up the darkness of space. "They're trying to disable your engines," Dawn said, holding onto a support rail beside Walker's pilot's seat. Her patterns pulsed rapidly with tension. "These are Royal Hunter ships, the best in my cousin's fleet." Walker's hands moved quickly over the controls. "Royal Hunters, ha. Let's see how they handle the local scenery." He turned the ship toward a massive asteroid field ahead. Chunks of rock, some as large as ships, floated in a dangerous dance of gravity and momentum. "You're not thinking off," Dawn started. "Going through it. That's exactly what I'm thinking." Walker grinned. "Unless your royal hunters want to follow us in." Dawn's patterns flickered with surprise. "They will. They're programmed to never abandon a target." Perfect. The first asteroids loomed ahead of them. Walker's small patrol ship darted between them with precise movements. Behind them, the larger ships followed, their superior weapons useless in the dense field. "How are you plotting a course through this chaos?" Dawn asked, watching Walker navigate past a spinning rock the size of a small building. "I'm not," Walker replied, making another sharp turn. 5 years of patrol duty out here taught me something. Sometimes the best plan is no plan. Those royal hunters, they're probably using advanced computers to calculate safe paths, but asteroids don't follow calculations. As if to prove his point, 2 massive rocks collided behind them. One of the pursuing ships had to make a desperate maneuver to avoid the debris, nearly colliding with another hunter. Dawn's patterns began to pulse with understanding. "You're using their precision against them. They're too perfect in their movements." "Exactly. Sometimes you need a little chaos, though. Hold on tight." Walker suddenly cut the main engines. The ship rotated 180 degrees while maintaining its forward momentum. For a brief moment, they were flying backward through the asteroid field. "What are you?" Dawn began. Walker fired the forward thrusters, dramatically slowing their ship. 2 of the pursuing vessels shot past them, unable to match the unexpected maneuver. The third ship tried to stop but clipped an asteroid, sending it spinning. "Now we go up," Walker said, pushing the control stick forward. Their ship rose perpendicular to the asteroid field's plane, where the rocks were less dense. Dawn's patterns glowed brighter. "That was incredible. But they're already regrouping. We don't need to lose them completely. We just need to reach the mining zone." Walker pointed to a cluster of lights in the distance. "Those are abandoned mining platforms. Still automated, still drilling." Understanding dawned in Dawn's color-shifting eyes. "The platforms are still active. But that means active drilling means active sensors. And those sensors broadcast on all frequencies." Walker opened a communication channel. "This is Patrol Ship Delta 7 declaring an emergency, activating emergency protocols on all mining platforms in range." The platform's lights suddenly intensified. Powerful scanning beams swept out in all directions, creating a web of sensor activity. "Their targeting systems will be useless in all that interference," Dawn said, her patterns now pulsing with excitement. "And their fancy calculations won't help them navigate manually through that sensor web." Walker adjusted their course slightly. "We, on the other hand, just need to follow the maintenance corridors between platforms. Every patroller memorizes those routes." Behind them, the royal hunters were already struggling. Their precise movements became jerky and uncertain as their systems were overwhelmed by the sensor activity. Dawn touched Walker's shoulder gently. "You turned their strength into weakness. On my world, we rely so much on our technology that we've forgotten how to trust our instincts." "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways," Walker replied, guiding them through the maze of platforms. "We humans learned spaceflight late compared to your people. We had to learn to improvise." A warning light flashed on his console. "But we're not safe yet. Those hunters are adaptable. We need to find somewhere to make a stand, or they'll eventually catch us." Dawn's patterns steadied with determination. "Then we make a stand. Together." Walker nodded, already forming a plan. The next part would be risky, but they were running out of options. It was time to stop running and face their pursuers. Walker guided their ship into the hollow shell of an abandoned mining platform. The massive structure had been carved into an asteroid, its empty docking bays like caves in the rock. Outside, the sensor interference still disrupted the royal hunter systems, buying them precious minutes. "Your plan is to hide?" Dawn asked, her patterns showing confusion. "Not hide," Walker replied, powering down non-essential systems. Set a trap. Those hunters are angry now. They'll be less careful. He pulled up a schematic of the mining platform on his display. See these old fuel tanks? They're probably still half full. Don's patterns brightened with realization. You want to use them as weapons. Smart and dangerous. I like how you think. Walker checked his weapon systems. But first, we need to prepare. Can you help me understand their ship's weak points? Dawn moved to the console, her fingers dancing over the controls. Royal hunters have heavy shielding everywhere except near their sensor arrays. Too much shielding there would blind them. She paused. But hitting such a small target. Leave that to me. Walker began programming commands into the ship's computer. What we need is a distraction. Something big enough to make them focus on the wrong thing. Outside, the first hunter ship appeared at the entrance of the mining platform. Its weapons were charged, scanning for them in the darkness. Walker touched a control, and suddenly all the platform's ancient warning lights blazed to life. The hunter ship hesitated, its sensors overwhelmed by the sudden illumination. Now comes the fun part, Walker said. He fired a single shot, not at the ship, but at one of the old fuel tanks. The explosion was massive, sending debris and burning fuel in all directions. The hunter ship's shields flared as it tried to back away. But Walker was already moving, their small ship darting through the chaos. There, Dawn pointed at the hunter's sensor array, barely visible through the flames. Walker fired again. This time, his shot found its mark. The hunter's sensors exploded in a shower of sparks, and the ship began to spin, its navigation systems crippled. But the other two hunters had arrived. They split up, trying to trap Walker's ship between them. They're adapting to your tactics, Dawn warned, her patterns pulsing rapidly. Good, Walker smiled. That means they're not watching where I want them to go. He fired at another fuel tank, this one positioned between the two hunter ships. The explosion forced the hunters apart. One ship drifted too close to the platform structure. Old mining equipment, shaken loose by the explosions, crashed into its hull. Your ship is smaller, more maneuverable, Dawn said, understanding dawning in her color-shifting eyes. You're using the environment itself as a weapon. Exactly. Big ships, small spaces, bad combination. Walker spun their ship through a narrow gap between debris chunks, something the larger hunters couldn't hope to copy. The remaining functional hunter tried to target them, but Walker kept close to the platform structure. Each shot from the hunter risked hitting the unstable fuel tanks or ancient mining equipment. One more trick, Walker said, flying toward what looked like a solid wall of the platform. At the last second, he fired at a specific point. The wall exploded inward, revealing an old maintenance tunnel. Their small ship shot through just as the last hunter fired. The shot hit the tunnel entrance, causing it to collapse behind them. How did you know that tunnel was there? Dawn asked, her patterns glowing with amazement. Standard mining platform design. They all have emergency escape routes. Walker guided them through the narrow tunnel. And now we have a clear path out the other side, while they have to go around the whole asteroid. They emerged from the tunnel into open space. Behind them, the mining platform was partially collapsing, its ancient structure finally giving way after the battle. We did it, Dawn said softly, her patterns shifting to colors Walker hadn't seen before. 3 royal hunters, defeated by 1 human patrol ship. We did it together, Walker corrected her. Your knowledge of their ships, my knowledge of the territory. Good team. But before Dawn could respond, new alerts flashed on their screens. More ships were appearing on their long-range sensors, dozens of them. Those aren't hunters, Dawn said, her patterns suddenly bright with hope. Those are my loyal forces. They found us. Walker nodded, allowing himself to relax slightly. Then let's go meet them. I think we have quite a story to tell. The grand hall of the royal palace shimmered with light reflected from 1,000 crystalline surfaces. Walker stood before the council of stars, feeling slightly out of place in his formal marine uniform among the elegant alien nobles with their glowing pattern-marked skin. Dawn stood at the center of the council chamber, her patterns radiating with a strength and authority that made her seem taller than she actually was. The data crystal they had saved, the one she had clutched so tightly during their escape, now projected its contents for all to see. "The evidence is undeniable," Dawn's voice carried through the hall. "My cousin plotted to take the throne through murder. The royal hunter's attack logs and command codes prove it." The council members' patterns flickered with shock and anger as they reviewed the evidence. Walker watched Dawn's cousin being led away in energy restraints, his once proud patterns now dim with shame. However, Dawn continued, turning to face Walker. "This crisis has brought us something valuable. It has shown us that strength comes in many forms, and that perhaps we have become too dependent on our technology." She gestured toward Walker. This human, with nothing but a patrol ship and his own ingenuity, defeated 3 of our finest royal hunters. He did not need advanced AI or superior weapons. He used his mind, his experience, and most importantly, his heart. Walker tried not to blush as hundreds of color-shifting eyes turned to study him. Dawn's patterns softened as she spoke directly to him. "James Walker of Earth, step forward." He approached, remembering the protocol Dawn had quickly taught him before the ceremony. He bowed slightly, just the right amount to show respect without submission. "Your actions have not only saved my life, but have opened our eyes to new possibilities," Dawn said. "For generations, my people have looked down at younger species, believing our advanced technology made us superior. You have proven that true strength lies not in our tools, but in how we use them." She raised her hand, and her patterns began to glow with formal ceremony. "By my authority as heir to the stellar crown, I hereby create a new position. Human guardian of the royal house. Will you accept this honor?" Walker looked up at her, seeing not just a princess now, but the friend who had fought beside him. "I would be honored," he said simply, "though I might need some help learning all your protocols." Dawn's patterns flickered with what he now recognized as amusement. "Then let us learn from each other. Your ways may be different, but they are no less valuable than ours." The council members' patterns began to pulse in approval, a rippling wave of light through the hall that Walker had learned was their equivalent of applause. An older council member stepped forward, his patterns showing wisdom accumulated over centuries. "This marks a new chapter in our history. Perhaps it is time we open more diplomatic channels with Earth." "Agreed," Dawn said. "But not just diplomatic channels. Cultural exchange, scientific cooperation, true partnership." She turned to Walker again. "Starting with our new guardian showing us some of those old ways that proved so effective." Walker grinned. "I'm sure Earth's Marines would be happy to demonstrate a few tricks, though I hope you don't mind if we keep the asteroid field maneuvers to a minimum." Laughter rippled through the hall, a musical sound accompanied by dancing patterns of light. Dawn's own patterns glowed with warmth as she addressed the council one final time. "Let this day be remembered not just as the day a plot was foiled, but as the day we learned that true strength comes in many forms. Sometimes it takes a stranger's perspective to help us see our own blind spots." As the ceremony concluded, Walker stood beside Dawn, watching the council members file out. "So," he said quietly, "what's next for the future queen?" Dawn's patterns shifted to colors he'd never seen before, something between hope and determination. "We build something new, together. After all," she added with a grace that couldn't quite hide her amusement, "I still owe you a life debt." "I thought we agreed to drop that," Walker protested. "We did." Dawn's patterns danced with light. "But some traditions are worth keeping, especially when they lead to friendship." Walker couldn't argue with that. Looking out at the star-filled sky through the palace's crystal walls, he realized that this wasn't just an ending. It was a beginning. A human marine and an alien princess had shown 2 civilizations that they had more to learn from each other than either had imagined. The stars seemed brighter somehow, full of new possibilities.